Welcome to the special Back to School sneak peek edition of MindShareTV as we gear up for the 16th Canadian EdTech AI Summit taking place at the University of Toronto, October 29th and 30th. 41 days to go. I'm your host, Robert Martellacci, chair of the summit and founder of MindShare Learning Media. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Steve Brown, the CEO of Nelson, Canada's leading education company, and our keynoter on October 30th. He's entitled his presentation, The Intersection of Human and Artificial Intelligence. Could be more timely as we face more incredible opportunities and profound questions in the age of AI. Steve, welcome to the show and thanks for taking part in this very important national conversation.
Thanks, Robert. It's great to be here.
A little bit about Steve Brown. As I mentioned, he's CEO of Nelson. Has made his mark in Canada and internationally by leading organizations through digital transformation. His career spans a diverse mix of industry and technological experience from multimedia, entertainment, and automotive, and now learning solutions. Steve's joined Nelson in 2016. It's transformed the vision for this 110-year-old company by reimagining the role and purpose of a publisher in 2017 and beyond. Steve, you've done incredible things in a very short time. You're a strong believer in transformational power of education and the role it plays in building a stronger society. As the education landscape continues to evolve, the K-12 space and post-secondary markets and beyond, Steve has taken an increased attention on student engagement in order to prepare students for success in the future workforce. Steve, talk to me about your passion and commitment to transforming education and learning experiences and your why.
I think my passion was as surprising to me as it was to many other people from someone coming outside of education. But I believe in the societal effect that education has. I think that the world needs to have a much more human focus. When you talk about what's going on in transformation, there's probably never been more transformation than's going on right now. Society is going to change as a result of what's happening with AI. And I think that the human empathy, that the ability to learn and adapt has probably never been more important. And to do that, I think we've got to get education to a point where it's relevant for students. Students, like any other aspect of life, if you're doing something that you enjoy, you end up being better at it. And I think that we needed to go through that shift in education to ensure that children like to learn, that teachers could engage those students, and that needed to have a change in its methodology. So that was the reason, and then seeing the success come from that breeds greater success and greater involvement and a greater appetite to continue doing it. So I knew when I joined Nelson, which is frightening now, that's 9 years ago, that I could change, a 100-year-old company. I've spent a career doing that in different continents and countries around the world. And like you said, transcending industries, just the business of business, the leadership of leadership. What I didn't know is I'd fall in love with education. And I think that was a byproduct of seeing the success of what we were doing, which has become inspiring to me, quite frankly.
Absolutely. And I would have to say that is the uniqueness of the education sector versus other sectors.
Yeah.
I've been in this sector all my career in education, post-secondary, and now we're celebrating 25 years of MindShare. And, we have a long ways to go to hit 100 like you and beyond, but we're hitting 25 years next year. And people in the industry tend to stay in it because it's about the impact or potential impact you can make on the lives of students. And it's a great segue to the theme of the conference. And by the way, Dr. Hinton, Serendipity, Professor Emeritus U of T, where we're hosting our summit, October 29th and 30th, 41 days to go, talked about the second industrial revolution. You have a British background, the Industrial Revolution, Where did that begin? And now we're into a second one.
I think that, when I talk about the intersection between human and artificial intelligence, let's never forget that artificial intelligence was created out of human intelligence. I mean, it was human intelligence that gave birth to that innovation. And
Brilliant.
You listen to Hinton, and he talks about somewhat dystopianly now about it being, the genie's out of the bottle and it's going to keep on marching. But
he has a cautionary approach to it, most definitely.
Right. But if you take historically, the democratization of education with Gutenberg's printing press in the 15th century, that frightened a lot of people. At the time, continents and countries were controlled by families. And then with the democratization of that education being able to spread through the printing press knowledge and engage people, that was considered somewhat revolutionary for sure, but also with a view of, is this going to be a good thing or a bad thing? And then that rolls forward. You talked about the Industrial Revolution, predominantly driven in the UK.
Right.
And what happened in the 18th and 19th century was viewed as very disconcerting by people who'd had industries. But it's really, I think, to me, the one that I draw the most parallels with AI is the advent in the 20th century of electricity. That changed everything. Because as you march forward and then you get further into the 20th century with, the advent of the internet, people looked at that both positively and negatively. A readiness and an accessibility to information, but also the cautionary view of misinformation. And that just got accelerated as we move further on into 21st century with social media. So, societies lived through massive changes before. I think the difference with AI is going to be the accelerator. I mean, it's not going to be more than 5 years that we've got humanoids in our homes who are cooking and cleaning for us.
We already have the robots cleaning floors, right? So absolutely.
You're going to have that humanoid venture that can, repair your plumbing problem. So, we hear a lot in education about the trades and training people for the trades, but there's an element of AI that will even replace elements of the trades.
Fascinating. But you can't replace human ingenuity and human connection, which is at the heart of why we're doing what we do. And appropriately, the theme of your keynote is the intersection of human and artificial intelligence. So let's jump into that and unpack that a little bit, because my perspective is you can never replace a great teacher. And it's that emotional connection. When we think about the impact teachers made in our lives and careers, it was that human connection that inspired us to achieve more and deeper learning.
Yeah. I think, when I talk obviously with a lot of teachers across the country and around the world, and there's kind of a polarization to the view that it's a great thing and we're going to embrace it, or it's a negative thing and maybe it'll replace teachers. Teachers will never be replaced. And we're talking about teachers in the classroom, but there are societal teachers too, mentors, leaders, country leaders, political leaders who inspire change and make change that brings the humanization aspect to an unreplaceable point. But if you look at the history of human nature, it's the humans doing irrational acts that has saved human nature across decades and millennia. And if you talk to AI and you just get into an open chat, then AI will tell you the things that it can't replace, that it doesn't have the ability to replace. And people talk about machine learning and how it will train itself and those will change. But there are aspects of human nature, the irrational acts, that have saved society, both in wars, in medicine. And it's often the irrational that happens. I was talking to somebody last night at a drinks dinner, and we were talking about that. And they just got back from spending months in China. And some of the things they were telling me that are AI driven that's going on in Shanghai. And I haven't been in Shanghai for a couple of years now.
Right.
But the advent and the move is just startling, from getting a coffee delivered by a drone sitting in a park in central Shanghai in minutes. a single cup of coffee being delivered to you in a park. You know, if you take a look at transportation in the world,
right,
10% of, I think it's 9.2% is the actual statistic. 9.2% of the world's population are involved somehow in logistics. So from taxi drivers to truck drivers, all of those things are going to go away. I don't know if you saw yesterday a 13% bump in Lyft stock because they signed with Waymo.
Waymo, yeah.
We're going to see change, but you know, I love the technology. I honestly wish I was 30 years younger, but that's not stopping me diving into it right now. But I'm also a great believer in consumerism and change. And I think we're just going to see another massive change. But teachers play a role that will never be replaced. In my own experience, I had a positive and a negative experience.
Right.
I had a headmaster, as we called them in England, a principal in North American parlance, who played a massive influence on my life, a massive influence. I don't think he knew it at the time, but I still refer to the influence that he played. His name was Eric Gamble, and he believed in, you know, Steve Brown, the kid who was a disruptor, who always believed he could do better than anybody else. And he wanted to foster that and support me, where other teachers saw that as just being disruptive or arrogant. And, you know, I don't know that I've changed that much. I had hair back then, but I still believed I could do whatever I wanted and change the world. But then I had a teacher who was actually my math teacher, and I have a very numerate way of thinking. I actually see in numbers. And he believed through what would be the equivalent of 11th and 12th grade that I used to cheat on all my math tests, to the point where I used to sit beside him at his desk doing math tests because he thought I was cheating, because I saw numbers that translated to answers, and he wanted to see, you know, my work, my long division, my long subtraction, my algebra.
Right.
And I didn't think like that. I just saw numbers and saw the answers. So I proved him wrong that I didn't cheat, but that was a negative effect on me. So when I get people around me who believe that what I'm doing may be subversive in some way, I repel from that. That I don't want to be around people who affect me negatively. I want to be around people who I can affect in a positive way, and they feed me to do that more.
Fascinating. You know, we talk about preparing our students. It's a good segue to a question off script that relates to preparing our students for the next level and to thrive. And it's those 7 C's, the essential skills that we talk about. And the notion of multi-literacy and demystifying AI. I think a big part of digital transformation, as you've been through in other industries, people tend not to want to change.
Right.
And at this moment in time, 3 years ago, I started talking about AI at ISTE at our Can-Am event. 3 years later, most school districts are piloting or not doing anything or trying to figure out the guiding principles. Talk to me about what it takes. You know, Edwin is getting a lot of traction. Your new platform for learning, as you reinvented the Gutenberg press in a way digitally to deliver content and stay relevant. What do teachers and leaders need to know that is critical today to get to where they need to be? Because, you know, the first question that came out of the conference I was at yesterday was students cheating. How do you stop students from cheating? Well, this is about multi-literacy and understanding critical thinking and ethics and all those great things.
Yeah, it's a fine line. I mean, you know, as you know, we deal with all of the boards and districts across the country, and as well as the international schools around the world. I think there's got to be an air of openness, because if you choose to ignore it, you're going to get left behind. But you've also got to look about the positive effect, but also the negative effect. I mean, there's a lot of studies that have been done, and there's a lot of data coming out now that are showing that outcomes are going up with AI, kids using AI, and outcomes are going up. But the inverse of that is that the comprehension levels are going down. They aren't actually learning. They aren't retaining that knowledge. And the utopians in the world are saying, well, do they need to learn? Do they really need to show comprehension and retain that knowledge when you can just ask chat or whichever other engine you want that question and it can give it you immediately? And we're seeing that AI now in handheld devices where you can just ask a question. So arguably, do you need to retain that? But what I would tell you, when it comes to problem solving,
Right.
it's not cognitively that you remember learning something. It's when the metacognitive view comes in of you can come up with a solution because you did learn it. That's real comprehension.
Right.
I mean, you do that in business, you do that in medicine. When the pressure's on at that moment, you draw on something that you learned to come up with a solution for that problem in that moment. So
It's that notion of muscle memory, if you will.
Absolutely. And, I personally reflected on how I behaved in stressful situations where I came up with a situation that cured a problem or actually came to a solution that enabled us to move that problem and into the solution, and thought afterwards, well, that was good, Steve. When did you learn that? And that's an accumulation of learning. And that's, speaks to the lifelong learner. So that's when I think getting kids ready for the future, they've got to have some retained comprehension of what they've learned, not just find the way to have the correct answer for that period of time. I think that's a distinction.
Thank you for that. So Nelson has been a long pioneer in adapting to educational shifts, and the Edwin platform is making significant inroads. What do you see as some of the most pressing challenges and opportunities for us to harness the tools that we have at our disposal today?
That's a great question. And my answer is a very simple one. It's speed. Historically, as you know, if you were educated in Canada or around the world, you were educated on Nelson learning materials. The life cycle to produce new materials to equal new curriculum that's needed to provide those learnings and those life lessons for kids used to take 3 to 4 years. But with the speed of acceleration of society today, if we took that long to produce new materials to get into the hands of each student, and it should be done equitably across every student, it shouldn't be affected by socioeconomics or geographies. Every student should have the same opportunity, I believe. And when that's done, you have to move in terms of new content curriculum at the same speed as society. Otherwise, the destination will be gone when you arrive at it. So what technology provides us with Edwin is to be able to produce micro learning, what we call learning objects, at a speed to get them into the classroom that's relevant at that time, not deliver it 2 years later, as some people who have been more steadfast in their view that, education's different. Education isn't different. It's societal. Society's moving faster. You've got to move faster with it. So delivering the current materials aided by technology in a multimodality format in Edwin, so you can meet each learner with their certain style of learning in a quick manner to be able to give them that learning when they need it, is essential. Because otherwise we're not going to be writing history. We're not going to be changing the world. We're going to be reading about history. And whilst I'm a great historian, I think it's much more fun writing history than it is reading about it.
Fascinating. And for folks who are watching this live or just joining us, I'm on with Steve Brown, CEO of Nelson, Canada's leading education company, who is one of our keynoters, and his topic is entitled The Intersection of Human and Artificial Intelligence. Feel free to chime in with comments as we'll try to address any questions perhaps before we wrap up. Steve, talk to me about what advice you offer educators and education leaders and even parents who may feel overwhelmed with the pace of AI-driven change. I have a challenge keeping up. I asked ChatGPT to update me on what's new because of the proliferation of apps and the speed at which this is moving. It's unprecedented.
It is, and I think, as I've said before when we've talked about AI before, I think we're going to see a thinning of the herd. I think, you can't throw a rock in a room today without hitting an AI company. There's also a misconception of what AI is in many areas. it's often clever algorithms. It's not actually AI at all. So I think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to slow down. I think it's going to increase in its acceleration and its speed. But I think the proliferation of AI offerings will start seeing the Pac-Man effect, which is where the big guys are going to start eating the little guys. If they've got something that's useful, they'll start picking them up. There's going to be a lot of exits. There's going to be a lot of failures. So it'll change, but ultimately it's here to stay. It's never going away. So my advice to everybody is lean in, learn, listen, learn, and find out how you can use it for whatever your better good is, and embrace it and use it as a tool. It does concern me how some people think that AI is a product.
Right.
And that's where I think that there's a point of differentiation between artificial and human intelligence. It's that self-distinction of how can I use it to make something better? How can I use it to aid accessibility to material? How can I use it to be able to ensure that what I'm looking to achieve, whatever my goal may be, that it can aid in that? But not to think that it can just replace things in general. And there are some people who are saying that they don't need X, Y, and Z because of AI. I actually believe that that's problematic and incorrect. I guess only time will tell whether they're right or I'm right. But, you know, as I've once said, my money's always on me. So we'll see on that. One thing I know is it's not going away.
Well said. In that Pac-Man reference, I had a flashback to Nolan Bushnell, who was the pioneer behind that, who actually was a keynoter at the summit. So you are in good historical company. We talk about lagging indicators and leading indicators.
Yeah.
I think we need to try to be more forward thinking in this case. What are your thoughts as it relates to that? Because there's been a lot of discussion around lagging and leading when it comes to assessment and where kids are at. And personalization, are we going to ever achieve true personalization, which has so much potential in the age of AI, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. I think that as a scaffold around learning, there's still a need for that core material to teach kids what to do. But scaffolding it with tools for AI, from that personalized learning standpoint, particularly when you're talking about assessment, those tools are available and getting better and better. What's important is that I come back to that comprehension, that learning, that it aids learning and not just aids outcome. Outcome should go up because of comprehension and learning, and not just go up because of the availability of the answer. Because the last thing you ever want to be is laying on the table having an open heart surgery and the surgeon not know what to do when something catastrophic happens in that moment. At that moment, you don't have time. At that moment, you need deep learning and comprehension from your history. But if the aid of technology can increase that, I think society will be better off for it.
Thank you for that. Without giving away too much, what do you hope attendees will take away after your keynote, besides inspiration, because you are always passionate and inspiring? Talk to me about a couple of key takeaways that they might
all enjoy. I ever hope when I make any public address is that if they can have some reflection and some contemplation that actually gives them pause for thought afterwards, I think it's success. Hopefully there may be some joviality in there, a couple of things that are said that make people think. Undoubtedly there will be violent disagreement to some of my comments. There always is. It's something that I enjoy, being the agent provocateur, as I've said before. But if there's just reflection and it makes people think, then I think it's worthwhile. All I can give in any address is my opinion. So I always try and preface it that these are just my opinions, and if they bring about debate or, as I say, some consternation or some forethought or some reflection afterwards, then it's worthwhile. But there are many great speakers in the world who deliver. There's one thing that I would say is, if somebody stands up at the conference and says they're an AI expert, I'll say they're a liar, because I don't think there's such a thing. We're all on a journey together. We may be at different points of knowledge and opinion, but it's moving so fast that I don't think there is an expert today. There are just different points of views.
Well said. And I think this, not because we're hosting this summit, that this is going to be one of the most critical, important events in Canada in K-12 and higher ed this year, because I like to bring together the ecosystem of decision makers, from educators to superintendents, directors, industry, and government officials as well.
Yeah. It's an interesting time, Robert, because if you look, and I think there's a segregation between K-12 and post-secondary, probably greater now than ever before. As you know, we had a very large post-secondary division, which I sold in 2021. I read some statistics yesterday, which may be surprising. A high school diploma graduate entering the workplace in 2024, the average starting salary for that high school graduate, so no post-secondary degree, high school diploma, go through high school and enter the workplace. And this is a North American study. It's US and Canada. All of the numbers are blended and reported in US dollars. The average high school diploma employee in their first job earned $49,200 last year. Somebody who went on to spend a 4-year Bachelor's of Science, Bachelor of Arts, a 4-year degree program from a university, not a college, the difference was only $5,000, $49,200 to $55,100. We're seeing a degradation in the value of a post-secondary degree because of other learnings and other micro-credentialings and things that can be done.
Right.
And it was only $1,000 below with a 2-year college course. So there's becoming an equalization of the initial entrance into the marketplace. And I think that's why K-12 is becoming more and more and more important to produce people ready for the future that doesn't yet exist. And that's often, spoken about by many, but it's true. Right. Never more true than today.
Well, we're partnering with the folks from Skills Canada. And so career tech education, as it's called in the US, is more elegant than skilled trades because it has a stigma. So we need to fix that. And those career pathways, there are multiple career pathways that kids and parents don't tend to think about because of the stigma, I believe. But you can't replace human ingenuity and working with your hands. Robots can do it to a certain point, but you do still need that human connection. So in closing, finally, what excites you about this year's Canadian EdTech AI Summit, and why should educators, leaders, and EdTech partners join us to hear you speak?
Well, I don't know that anybody should just come to hear me speak. I wouldn't say too much about the rest of the summit. I think that because it's moving so fast, that hearing multifaceted opinions from different people from different walks of life and professions is good learning. And I think the more opinions you can get, the easier it is to make your own view. And it's a time of learning like we've never seen before. So I think that listening to people who have a view is never a waste of time. And also, I think that the interaction between people who are just visiting the summit and attending the summit is going to drive great conversation. And I think conversation is one of the huge advantages we have, that human interaction that can spark ideas that can change the future. And goodness only knows it's going to change.
Thank you so much. So inspiring, Steve Brown. Thank you for the thoughtful and inspiring preview. Your insights are powerful. And a reminder that AI will play an enormous role in educators' lives in the future. It's that human touch, the visionary leaders like yourself that ensure we move forward with courage and care. You certainly are quickly becoming a legend in my books in EdTech in a very short time. And so to our listeners, don't miss the opportunity to join us with Steve and national and international leaders at the 16th Canadian EdTech AI Summit, October 29th and 30th at the University of Toronto Mississauga, the home of Dr. Hinton, the pioneer behind AI, Professor Emeritus. Use promo code MSL100 that ends this Friday for your discount. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.